Yeah, I think we are live now. So, yeah.
So shall we start?
Yes, we are live. Yes, yes.
Okay. So let me welcome you all to today's seminar. The speaker is Dr. Kishor Bharti from A-Star Singapore. Um, so some of you have met him when he visited us this year. Um, so Dr. Kishor Bharti is a highly acclaimed uh, quantum computing scientist. His background is in physics. He did his PhD at the Center for Quantum Technologies in Singapore, and subsequently he was a postdoc at the University of Maryland. It's a joint. I remember joint quantum information and joint yeah, some quantum physics center, I guess. That's probably the national quantum algorithms hub in the US. And so his work was recognized internationally on a variety of topics in quantum computing. Um, and he is currently working, among other things, on quantum error correction. And so we're looking forward to his talk. And as many of you know, he's also a visiting faculty at our center. And he's recently published many important papers. And so we look forward to his talk today on quantum error correction. So with these few words, I'd like to invite Dr. Kishor Bharti to give his talk.
Thanks, Professor Das. Thanks for a very, I would say, generous and kind introduction. So, though I'm I prepared kind of a notability style slides. So, which means I will be writing and, along the way, talking and so on. And let's say if there are any questions, in any point, you could interrupt me and we could chat. And there is no one, rush to, complete the content or something. Maybe I will also turn off my video, I think, for better internet. Yeah. So basically, you know, like, um, like, uh, uh, though there is some, there is some overview, and you can see there's a bunch of topics that, subsection that I would like to cover. But even if I don't cover, let's say, last three or two, it's fine. The goal is not to cover everything, but engage in some discussion, and possibly I see, a lot of open questions which can, lead to room for a potential collaboration, discussion, and so on. So please stop me along the way, and we can chat and see so this is, so we develop a new formalism called strategic code formalism, which is we think is a universal spatio-temporal framework for quantum error correction. So all the codes that have been developed so far in the community, you can capture in this formalism, and all the codes that will be developed in the future, you can also, they will be a special case of this formalism. So you will be able to discuss that also in this. So the work is together with Andrew Tangara and Milegu, and this is the the archive version at the moment. We will update it. Yeah, this is your strategic code, universal temporal framework for quantum error correction. It came almost 2 months ago. Okay, so yeah, this work has been already been accepted at a couple of places, conferences, or this Beyond IIT conference. And Andrew is at the moment in the University of Illinois, Urbana champion, like, presenting this work, like, tonight actually, like, and then also at Aquis, like, if some of you are going to Aquis, like, which is like, Asian Quantum Information Science, like, Aquis 2024, it's in Japan. They are basically Andrew will be talking about this work also, like at Aquis also. So in case you happen to be around there and want to chat more, I mean, like, Andrew will be more than happy to discuss. Okay. So this is the overview. I mean, like, I will discuss the motivation, the framework, uh, how can you frame, like, all the existing quantum error correcting codes. Let's say, I will give some examples, like, how all of them can be captured in the framework. And then there is this thing called necessary and sufficient condition. So when is a code a valid quantum error correcting code? Basically, Emmanuel Neal and Raymond Laflamme gave the condition for it in the, like, in the I think 90s or early 2000. These are called Neal-Laflamme conditions. I think you can find in many textbook, also probably in Nielsen Chuang, if I'm not wrong. And this Neal-Laflamme condition tell you whether when a code is a valid quantum error correcting code, and they provide a necessary and sufficient condition for, like, error correction. And we, like, we give a condition, more general condition, which in the special case reduces to Neal-Laflamme condition. So yeah, and then we also give a optimization theoretic approach using which you can, like, in you can systematically develop, like, the codes that you want. So, like, you don't need to, like, I mean, use, I would say, intuition and all to develop code. In fact, you can run simple computer program, and the computer program will give you optimization, like, I mean, the code. So in fact, like, there been couple of people at ISI Kolkata. I think Gautam, some of you might know Gautam Paul and his student, and like, and a bit couple of my interns here. We are trying to, like, develop, like, try this out and develop, like, nice codes which can work in an adaptive setting. And there are several open questions also, which I will discuss along the way also, but in the end maybe. Anyway, so this is the broad overview. There is, like, no rush. And I mean, how much time I have overall? Like, it's like 1 hour.
Yes, I think, yes, sure, yes.
So yeah, so I would say that, in this 1 hour, maybe we can keep questions, like, here and there. And I just said there is no rush, like, to, like, finish everything. Like, let's just maybe see what we can cover. Okay. So this is the take-home message, that I have written here. So basically, we present the most general framework for quantum error correction. This can sound like, a very, I would say, a loaded statement, and, like, very powerful and ambitious, but, like, I mean, but what we are doing is that we are using a, I mean, we are, like, borrowing tools from something, like, some another field, like a resource theory field, where, people have this tool called quantum comb. And using this quantum comb, which, like, provides, like, the most general way to capture, let's say, channels or super channels, so on. Using this object, we basically bring this object in the land of quantum error correction. Like, so far, quantum comb was not introduced in quantum error correction community. And it's the power of this object that, like, that helps us, like, answer the question. That the question that we ask is, what is the most general way you can do quantum error correction? And it seems that it's nothing but, it's a interaction between two comb. Like, you have your comb, and then nature has their own comb. And like, you are trying to basically develop a code where your goal is to, like, kind of, counter the noise process which is happening in nature's comb. Second thing is, like, I mean, we introduce a new tool called interrogator. So, like, normally, let's say, when you talk to people about quantum error correction, they say that, like, there are two things in quantum error correction: the encoder and there is a decoder. And basically somewhere along the way, some noise process will happen. So basically you take some information, let's say psi, you encode it, then some noise happens, then you decode it and you recover your original psi, right? And you start with psi and you try to recover some psi prime such that psi is close to psi prime. That is what we want. But what we say that, this is very, still very classical. Like in quantum case, you can not only have encoder and decoder, but you can introduce a new object here called interrogator. So we have encoder, we have then after that interrogator, and then we have decoder. And this interrogator, I will explain later what I mean by that. But if this interrogator helps make our code, adaptive. None of the codes so far are adaptive. All the codes that we know in the community are, they're basically non-adaptive. Then on top of that, we also provide both algebraic and information theoretic necessary and sufficient condition. So when a code is a valid quantum error corrected code, and this condition basically reduced to the well-known Neal-Laflamme condition in the special case. On top of that, we also develop an optimization theoretic approach based on conic optimization, which helps us find systematically approximate codes in the general non-adaptive, adaptive or non-adaptive settings. So this is overall summary. If there is any question, please ask, or I could move to part one. Yeah. So this is the summary of what I'm going to what I will discuss, and let's say this is the take-home message. Yeah. So it seems there is no question. So then I will move to the next part. Okay. So let's talk about so there is this, anytime when people talk about let's say building a quantum computer or something, why quantum computing should be possible? Despite the presence of noise, this is a very fundamental question, and this question is not specific to quantum computing. Let's say any model of computing, even in classical model of computing, why computing should be possible despite faulty components. And the answer comes from something called threshold theorem. So you have similar to threshold theorem for classical computation, you have threshold theorem for quantum computation. And what it says is is very powerful. It says that, let's say you have some original circuit C, which has let's say polynomial number of gates, let's say Pn gate, whatever, some number of Pn gates. Now the probability of error occurring per gate component, per component of the circuit, it's a gate or whatever, let's say that is some P. If P is less than P threshold, then you will be able to construct another circuit C prime where the overall error that you have in the circuit, that can be reduced to any target epsilon that you want, any target epsilon. This is a very powerful statement using just polylogarithmic overhead. So you see apart from this Pn, you have this polylog overhead here. So it says that as long as the error per component is not very large, it's less than some threshold, I will be able to get a circuit C prime which is not very large compared to the original circuit, and the overall error that I get in C prime will be any target epsilon error that you want. So this gives hope, right? This gives the hope that quantum computing should be possible if we are able to reduce every component error below the threshold. And now you see that many of the companies and so on, they have been able to actually go below this threshold. But there are other subtleties and all, and maybe I will talk about that. So every time you talk to an experimentalist, the question, let's say if you're an error correction researcher, the question that they will ask, what is the threshold of your code? So threshold is a very important. And it's a multi-dimensional object, like in the sense that you want threshold for a particular code, for a particular noise model, for a particular decoder that you are using and all. So it's very loaded. I would say it's a loaded symbol. But nonetheless, you can, for specific instances, you can ask what is the threshold that you have, and then if the threshold is, let's say, if you manage to go below the threshold, then you will be able to do, like reliable computation. Yeah. So this is interesting. But then you can look at, like Dan. So this is from Nielsen Chuang book. But then you can go to Daniel Gottsman's book on quantum error correction, and you can see what are the different assumptions that go into proving this theorem. So this I have taken a table from Daniel Gottsman's book, and there are different assumptions. And the question is whether this assumption is required or not. And let's say what happened if you break the assumption, what happened to the threshold. So you see there are many different assumptions, and depending on that, the threshold can decrease by a constant factor or little change or no change or something. But there is something called uncorrelated error assumption that they want, that the errors are not correlated, which means that, like you want some sort of a Markovianity, like you want that, like the errors at a new time point is not related to error at a previous time point. And yeah, I mean, that's the assumption that go partially in proving the threshold theorem. But the moment you break it, like this assumption, basically the threshold can decrease by one or more orders of magnitude. So this is scary, right? I mean, maybe you can take a moment to appreciate that. So some people, like Gil Kala, many others don't believe in threshold theorem. They are like, okay, maybe, quantum computing is not possible. So we have hope in quantum computing coming from threshold theorem, but the threshold theorem relies on certain assumptions, and we have to see what are those assumptions realistic or not. So the assumption that, we have uncorrelated error is not a very realistic assumption. And in real world, errors can be correlated. And what happens in that? So, I don't know what is the current state of the art, but, this book is very recent, and it says that, the threshold theorem partially depends on uncorrelated errors. So we need a framework which, captures, correlated errors also. And yeah, so the question is how to model correlated noise in quantum error correction, and what is the most general approach to quantum error correction. Like these are the questions, that we ask. Like there has been a very nice paper recently on by Daniel Gottsman and Fu, where they talked about, they try to go beyond regular quantum error correction model, but you see that even in their paper there is no correlated errors and all. And then, you have different subspaces which change and so on. And they talk about what is, the approach to quantum error correction that you can follow, where, you try to go beyond regular stabilizer formalism. So you see that the regular stabilizer formalism is here. Subsystem code is a superset of stabilizer formalism. Flocate codes, they have some overlap. And the ISG code that has been proposed, that's like a superset of that. But none of them handle adaptivity. Actually, our strategic code formalism that we develop is a superset of all that. So in the spatial case, the strategic code reduces to, flocate, stabilizer, subsystem, or ISG. So this is what, this strategic code formalism is about. It's about trying to develop, the most general approach to error correction, where which in the special cases reduces to, other codes and so on. Okay. And where we model adaptivity. So I hope the motivation part is clear. if there is any question, maybe you can ask, or like I could move to like a relatively more technical part. Yeah, since there is no question, so I will move to like let's say the framework. But okay, so what is this? Like I mean, what is the formalism that we are talking about? So let's say you have some error. Like let's say you model your error using E0, which is some CPTP map. And what happened that like I mean, so like what we are saying that in our framework, we have this object called interrogator, and then we have this object called like sorry, encoder, and then we have this object called interrogator here, and then we have this object called decoder here. So you have three objects like encoder, like sorry, yeah, like encoder, interrogator, and decoder. And what happened that the overall object, like I mean, to you maybe it looks like a comb, right? I mean, you can say. So it's some object like which can capture like multi-time point process. And what happened that noise also you can think of like a comb. So you have a correlated noise is nothing but the noise is on new time point is related to like a noise at previous time point. So there can be some memory register going on, like in your noise process. So like here, like that. So you have one comb here. And what quantum error correction is nothing but like fight of combs. Yeah. So that's how like I mean we like okay, that's how we phrase quantum error correction as like it's I mean you can, yeah, you can use like your like I mean laboratory SCOM to basically fight nature SCOM. Yeah. And the regular error correction that people talk about, basically there is no interrogator at all. So like you have interrogator, so like in that case you have just encoder, and then you have like let's say a noise channel, and then you have a decoder. I mean, and you can have some register going from here to here. So you have they call it recovery map and some noise map. Yeah. Then some code state is going like here to here. It's a sign. Then after recovery, you want to recover like your psi here. Like that. So you see that the regular error correction is just a special case of it. And here like you can kind of capture multi-time point process. I mean, in our paper we like discuss this more rigorously, where like I mean we talk about like I mean each of them, they can be like CPTP map, there is some non-homogeneity. Overall like I mean there is, you can see there are three registers going on here. There are three memory registers. The first memory register basically is responsible for like adaptivity in your code. So what it tells you that like you can yeah, you can change the like the subspace where the information has been encoded every time, like by measuring this instrument which are called check instruments. And then you have these error channels like which can be also like can have a memory register for them, and then you have one memory register for your quantum state. So basically overall like there are three memory registers. There are and then there are a bunch of CPTP maps, and you can adapt your CPTP maps based on like the previous outcome that you receive. So in regular error correction, what happens that information is encoded in a subspace. But here what happens that like I mean let's say general dynamical code, or more general cases like I mean basically measurements can change the subspace where the information is encoded, and like you can go from one subspace to another and so on. So that's what is like responsible for the adaptivity. And you can see that like I mean this is the like the most general that one can like do to handle, let's say yeah, non-Markovian noise. Actually, let's say this idea, let's say about using comms, let's say, not in quantum error correction, but in for open system, as I think proposed by many people, including Kavan Modi. And Kavan basically talks about, the most general way an experimentalist can, try to fight noise. Here we say that, if you think in the setup of quantum error correction, suddenly you will see that all these things, can help give you a quantum error correcting code. Yeah. So in certain sense, I would say that, we build upon, we borrow intuition from Kavan Modi's work. His work was not in quantum error correction, but in general open system. And quantum error correction is nothing but, one open system trying to fight another open system. So like nature is a big open system, and your quantum computer is another open system. And you are basically, trying to find the nature's open system using your open system. And so this was interesting, to do that. Yeah. So this is the framework. At this point, if you have any question, maybe please ask, or I think I could.
Kishor, hi. I would have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So your interrogator is like your syndrome extraction unit, or?
Yeah. So interrogator is like, so let's say you have some in code, and after that error occurs. Then what happens that, you measure your check measurements, let's say in the stabilizer code, you will measure your stabilizers. The moment you measure your stabilizers, you will get some, some classical value, right? Which is yours, which is what we call syndrome, like as you said. Now, based on the syndrome that you get, you could decide in the next round what check measurement to do. And you go to the very end and you do the decoding operation. So this formalism actually, was developed first by Hastings and Ha in something called, they call it, flocate code, and then generalized to something called ISG code, or let's say more general, something called dynamical codes by Daniel Gottsman. But what happens that they do not model adaptivity? What if, let's say, depending on I get some outcome, maybe in the next round, I might want to, change my check measurements. So that's what, this the first memory register helps you, it helps you model adaptivity. And what happens that every time you measure these check measurements, your subspace where you code the information, changes. So what happens that in a regular flocate code, they have a, the subspace where they code information, that oscillates between different subspaces and come back to the original subspace, which is different from regular static quantum error correction, where you have just a fixed subspace, and that's why these codes are called dynamical codes, because the subspace can change, or it can be periodic. So then you can call it flocate code. And what we say that, you can change, but you can also bring adaptivity, and all these things you can formally capture using this object called quantum code. Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't get one point here. See, when you do a syndrome extraction, the stabilizer measurements that you do are meant to keep you within the subspace. So now, when you find an error, it just means that you're outside the subspace and you go for correction. You go try correcting for it.
So you don't correct at this point. Maybe, depending on the syndromes, you can perform some outcome. So you can perform some measurement, but you don't do decoding or, let's say, recovery at this point. So
okay, that is fine. So you're saying you decode towards the end, you reserve it towards the end. Maybe I track it on a classical computer. Let's just say that. But even otherwise, I'm not able to appreciate the point that you move to a different subspace code unless it is not, all Paulis that I correct for. Suppose, let's say I begin with a general purpose code, which means the code has a capacity to correct for X, Y, and Z. If it can correct for X, Y, and Z, it means my syndrome measurements are able to detect X, Y, and Z. If they can identify and detect, I could continue with the same code. Now, why would I go to a different code?
Yes, sir. So that's a very good question. Like when you were asking, like why doing all this, like multi-time point and all that, like let's say if we do regular stabilizer code and like it can correct my XYZ and I am done, right? So that's what your question is, right? Like why are
Yes,
we
yes. Maybe there's some assumption that I am missing from understanding. There's some key thing that I'm not able to uh,
so what
identify.
like you are talking in the stabilizer formalism, huh? But after that, like in 2020, actually, like things changed a bit. Like so there was a paper by Hastings and Ha. Actually, I talk later about that, right? In Hastings and Ha paper. Yeah. So they came up with this thing called dynamically generated logical qubits. So this is a very beautiful work, like which started many of. So this was a shift from regular error correction. So in regular error correction, what you do that you have some like some quantum state psi, and you encode it in a subspace, let's say some part of a Hilbert space, and the moment it goes outside, you try to like bring it back by doing some correction operator. Like you go out and then like you will try to bring it back, and that's how it works. But then what happens that like there are many, so then you have this kind of a relation, right? That the number of physical qubit should be equal to number of logical qubit plus like number of stabilizers, measure independent stabilizer generators that you have, like this kind of a relation. There can be scenarios where like n is equal to like let's say m, which means you have no logical qubit. So then you will say that it seems that I don't have any logical qubit if I look at it in this framework. But the moment you, let's say, instead of thinking in a fixed subspace framework, you try to think in a manner, like where, let's say, the subspace itself changes, like the subspace is dynamic. Then you can get logical qubits, and those kind of logical qubits were called dynamically generated logical qubits. And there is a benefit to it, like, so for example, let's say regular Turing code, right? The weight of the measurement is 4 that you perform. But in this kind of formalism, you can reduce the weight of the measurement to 2, and your measurement need not commute with each other. So there are a lot of benefits, like the
Okay,
measurement
I
need
see.
not commute, like you can reduce the weight of the measurement and so on. And if you try to analyze, like this kind of codes in the regular, static framework, you will not get any logical qubit. But in the dynamic framework, you get like you generate some logical qubit. So this is a very beautiful question, and like and like several people ask, like like why are we like working with these dynamical codes and so on, and that's what like the diagram. That's why I was talking about like let's say this dynamical code here, and then in general that like there is this different formalism that people have. So this ISG code is like you can replace that by something called dynamical code also. Like that's the name, another name for it. Dynamical code. And what we are doing is that we are providing a more general framework, which in the spatial case reduces to like all of these things. Yeah. So just you look at the spatial cases, and they will be, in some case it will be stabilizer code, in some case it will be subsystem code, dynamical code, brocade code, and so on. And we are saying that basically we are asking this question, like what is the most general way you can do error correction, static or dynamic or whatever. And and error correction is nothing but you are trying to build an open system which is fighting against nature's open system. And you have a bunch of controls in your laboratory. Like as an experimentalist, I have a bunch of like knobs that I can turn. And by turning those knobs, basically I'm trying to like fight against the nature's open system. So the nature's open system, the best way you can model, like Kavan Modi has like talked in another paper, is this thing called quantum comb. And you have another comb at your disposal. And basically error correction in a most general framework is nothing but fight of combs. Like you have your comb and you have nature combs, and basically like these two are like you are trying to and you see that in this manner you can also handle errors which are like let's say correlated. So you can have like the new error can depend on the previous error, and so you can have correlated error, for example.
So it's like on the fly, you change your subspace
Exactly.
depending on the information that you get from the syndrome. So
Exactly.
these are not then general purpose codes. They are probably something very specific.
No,
They have lesser capacity to correct for errors.
no, you can do general things like basically special codes will be, like, I mean, so the regular codes are nothing but you have a, like no adaptivity. So what we say that you have encoder and you have decoder, but what you can do, you can build a new software called interrogator. Actually, and we are building it, like we are using reinforcement learning and other approaches, like we are currently building this this new object, like, concretely. And regular codes, what they do is that they start with some sign, they encode it, and then some noise happens, and then they decode it. So it's just one step here. Flocate code is basically you just move a few steps and then you decode it. But you could, like you could very much adaptively move and so on. So you can see, right? I mean, this is this in the like all those other things, like they will basically special case of this more general formalism. So we are not talking about, like weight of the measurement or this or that. The question is, I mean, it's your choice. Like, do you want to just handle one time point, all measurements commuting? Okay, then you are a stabilizer code. Okay, one time point, but like measurements not commuting, you have subsystem code. Okay, multiple time points, measurements, like repeat. Okay, you have then gate code. Multiple time points, measurement may not repeat, dynamical code. But what about, like if they're adaptive? What about, like I can decide based on what I get, next thing. And the way you can capture all this via, like this interrogator, or in more general, like we could say, using this strategic code formalism.
I see. Okay.
So yeah, so that's why, like now we are even seeing, like, in like we have some initial results with, like, Gautam and with some of my collaborators here, where we, like in the special cases, we are seeing that using smaller number of qubits actually in a dynamical setting, you will be able to protect your information than the regular setting, like yeah. So this was the, like, I mean, motivation, like, I mean, why can we give a framework? And that's why we say that, like, I mean, the framework that we have is basically the most general framework that you can come up with. And it's basically all existing and future quantum error correction codes. They are special cases of our framework, because we are using this quantum comp, which is the most general way you can model a system, like non-Markovianity and so on. So, like, I mean, it's because I would say people in open quantum system, in particular, Kavan, Modi, and others, had already used this tool, and that tool was not present in the quantum error correction community. And you can see that, like our contribution is basically bringing this tool here, and like, I mean, and then, like, using it to model quantum error correction. So they didn't, like, I mean, talked about all these things like interrogator, encoder, decoder. They just talked about comps. But, like, I mean, when we saw it, was like, okay, it seems like you can use your comp to model encoder, interrogator, and decoder. And what the nature is doing is applying another comp. Yeah. Yeah, like, does that clarify?
Yes, pretty much. What would complete is in case you have some example.
Yeah. So like there are several, like, I mean, examples that we talk about, like how you can model some of the existing code, the space-time code, and so on, like in this framework. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And also in the paper, like we talked about all this, like, yeah. But let's say, I mean, this is like kind of a start. Like, I mean, we haven't, I mean, I mean, interesting thing would be, like so we give this optimization theoretic approach, like, which we discuss here. And with some people, we are kind of trying to, I mean, at the moment, trying to explore, like, let's say, using this formalism, can we go beyond, like what the existing codes can offer? And indeed, we are seeing some, like some interestingly. So obviously, like, I mean, there are some, one can say academically, it is like, I mean, it is satisfying, but one error correction are practical things. Like, you would like to use it to, like, I mean, make, like, I mean, like protect your quantum system, right? And using our optimization theoretic approach, basically we have given I mean, yeah, we have given this approach which can systematically, actually, it's, like, I mean, going all over, but, it's, you can write everything as a optimization over, like some kind of a separable cone. And this kind of optimization program, which you can code in your laptop, can give you a new code, like, I mean, in this kind of setting that, like, people have discovered.
Your queue is the queue out here is
Yeah, so there are details, and also basically Q is,
okay.
like some semi-definite operator which takes
Okay,
into account those check measurements, and, like the encoder and the decoder's check measurement. Sorry, the CPTP map. So it's a some overall a big CPTP map, which, like, which has like several tensors coming from, like the multiple time point that you have. And it's a it's a PSD object, and basically you optimize over, like this PSD object Q for some degree of, like some figure of merit, and that gives you, like code, yeah, like code. So it's an optimization of a separable cone. So in general, that this is hard, but I mean, that's asymptotic statement. But concrete cases you can try, and you can get different codes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is convex optimization class.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is no, I mean, this is it's sort of separable cone. So yeah, I mean, it's convex, but, like, it's not like polytype. It's bad actually. But you can't do. I mean, it's like, complexity theory will stop you, right? Because optimization of a separable cone is in general NP hard, and you can't do that, like, because decoding problem is NP hard, right? I mean, and you can't come up with a more general setup where you can like bypass the underlying hardness, right? I mean, so it's expected.
Okay.
It's expected that the overall optimization that you will do, but anyway, these are asymptotic statements. So like, I mean, in concrete cases, you can try it, and, like, I mean, and get the code that you want. So actually, like Nirupam, who is at ISI, and like, at Virginia Tech, there is a student Ankit. With them, basically, I am trying to, like, I mean, we are running it, and we have found like some good examples at the moment. Yeah.
Nice, very nice.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, so that is, like, I would say, kind of like the framework where you have, like the 3 registers, like and one register models the adaptivity. The other register is your code register, where you keep your encoded information, and the third register is not in your control. That's in the control of nature, where, like, nature can decide based on previous whatever they did, what new error to perform, and so on. So this is in the devil's hand, and everything else is in your control, and you are trying to, like basically protect your quantum system. Okay, so this is a more formal treatment of, like whatever I said in English, like, here you can talk in terms of, like CPTP maps and so on. So decoder is some CPTP map, error is basically, like some CPTNI map, like trace non-increasing, and you have a bunch of errors, so you can, like, you can model it together by some capital, like, boldface E. Interrogator is basically a sequence of check operations, where each of the check operation is a CPTP map, and, like, I mean, and code spaces are basically. So what happens that, like, every time you perform a check measurement, it takes your initial memory system, and, like and yeah, like the code system, and it takes it to, like updated memory system and a new code system. So basically, your code subspace where you encode your information, like that gets updated due to the action of the check measurement that you perform. Yeah. Okay, so this is all. Like, I mean, you have a code space, like, you have a bunch of, like, you have interrogator, you have decoder, and error, and together, like, you are trying to basically do error correction. So a more general, I mean, and then, like, you have some error. So all the errors maps that you have, you can combine them together via, like a Choyamil-Oskit representation, which is, like, I mean, I don't want to go into that. It's some representation where you, like, you can go between vectors and matrices, and using this you can model your error as, like some some matrix, like the overall error that you have. And similarly, you can model your interrogator, like, here in some way, like, as this like, positive semi-definite object. And how this interrogator and the error talk to each other, you can model that using some, like fancy object called link product. So a link product is nothing but, like a generalization of the Hilbert-Smith inner product. So you have, let's say, matrices AB, their Hilbert-Smith inner product is defined a trace of A dagger B, like that's your, like Hilbert-Smith inner product. So the link product is basically, like, let's say you have some A over HA tensor HC and B over HC tensor HC. So in the link product, you basically link it through the C subsystem, like, C subspace that you have in common. So you see that A link B is like, is defined as a, like, you see here, like, you take the trace over partial trace over HC and so you see that there is some partial transpose going on and some partial trace going on. And in this way, like, you define your link product. So basically, when I say that you're like a nature's comb and like your comb, like, talking to each other, it's basically the way they talk to each other is via this thing called link product. And the link product, like, captures, this most general notion of inner product. Yeah. So in the special cases, like the link product can reduce to, tensor product, or let's say regular, like a transpose. Yep. Okay. So let's say you have some error, like, multi-point error, and you have interrogator. You can define the link product between E and I using, like what you have. So this E star I, it captures the interaction between error sequence and interrogator. Like, that's what it is. Like, is E star I. Yeah. And once you have talked about, like link product and like, defined all of your object, like, code subspaces, interrogator, decoder, error, and so on, that can help you, like model, like basically the necessary and sufficient condition, which in the special case will reduce to, like the regular Neal-Laflamme condition that we know. Yeah.
Kishor, one more question. Why do we need this vectorization of the error? Basically, the form that you have written. E into I, below. Yeah, this one. Why do you want to vectorize it? Why can't you just put it as matrices?
Because we have multiple matrices, right? And then later, like we want to capture some kind of a like inner product between the sequence of error maps with, like my sequence of check measurements. Yeah. So I want to club them together. It's for like, I would say notational, or also I would say operational, like mathematically operational usefulness. So basically, you can combine them together, and then using this you can make a bigger, like, one matrix which has information about each of the individual matrices.
Oh, I see. Okay. Some kind of convenience. That,
I have multiple time points, right? I have multiple errors here, like here.
okay.
So each of them is like, some matrix, and basically I'm vectorizing them together, and like, like using their and then I'm combining them together to get, like this object E here. Okay.
So the sum over E is over all time steps. Your error operators, the CPTP.
Yes. So let's say you have, like, the error that you can have will be at first time step, error sequence E0, then E1, then E2, E3. Like, you have some sequence of error can occur. So you know, right? Given any, like, channel, you can have this cross representation, and then from B, like, what can happen that a particular cross map can act, and then let's say from the second, so you have a bunch of like error channels, right? A0, E1.
So each small E subscript I is a CPTP map,
right? So each small EI is basically a cross operator of,
of
like
a given CPTP.
Yeah. So yeah,
I see. So this is just the E is then just one CPTP across one time step. So you have multiple E.
Yes. So you take a multiple of such E, and basically using them, like you get, like, so basically you get this EE, which is the vectorized representation of the sequence of cross operator EE0 up to EEL. So you have a bunch of error channels, right? E0, E1 up to EL. And corresponding to that, you will have, like the cross operators. And what will happen that at a particular time point, from even like in a list of cross operator, for that time point, one of the cross operator will act. Then in the next point, another cross operator will act.
Okay.
Hence, you will get, like many different sequences. So what you do is that you sum over all of such error sequences. That is possible there. Okay. So that gives us, like this object E. And like in similar way, you can define this object I, which comes from the interrogator. And like, I think I'm almost close to like 6:30. Yeah, like you can using this E and all, like you can talk about, like the yeah, like you can do many interesting things. So you could talk about how your error and the interrogator talk to each other. You can model them. So this is what the interaction between error sequence and the interrogator basically looks like. Yeah. So this is what I mean when I say that, like, yeah, like the nature's comb is trying to fight with, like your comb, and, like you're trying to do something interesting. Yeah. So all these things, like, we discuss in more detail in the paper. I'm here, like, just trying to, there's like a lot of, I would say, the content that we borrowed from different papers and used here and so on. So it can be, I think, like maybe this talk might be, maybe I'm not doing the, like the right judgment to the content. Like maybe I think so. Yeah, like yeah. It could be possible that, when you go to the paper, you see these things discussed in much more detail. So here, like I'm just trying to motivate that there are these tools like, link product, and then, like, these objects that we have defined, like, interrogator, chess, like, this decoder, error sequence, like, the sequence of code spaces, and like, and this basically one comb interacting with another comb. These all can, help you understand the general approach for, like the quantum error correction. Yeah. So that is, like I would say, my key, I think, message that I would like to convey. And like, as Akshaya, for example, asked, why do we need that? So for that, that also be discussed in the paper. But that builds upon other work that has been done in the literature based on a stabilizer code, subsystem code, or dynamical code, and so on. And basically, we give this framework which handles all that. Okay. So I have, like maybe like 5 minutes or something. I will just wrap up. Yeah, it's a lot of things. So I think maybe, like, when I visit in November, I will need like 2-3 talks to cover all of this in detail. Yeah. So
sure, that'd be nice.
yeah. So yeah, so you can, like, for example, it's like, the Hastings code, your check measurement will look like, XX here, YY here, ZZ here, and there is no such strong adaptivity and so on. So you can model honeycomb code, and if you can model honeycomb code, you can model like many of the interesting other codes also, right? You just need one check measurement, and then like after that you can forget about everything else. You get the output and just do decoding at the end. Yeah. And there is this thing called space-time code, which is like in Daniel Goldsman's this very nice paper. You can model that also, and like space-time code basically captures all of these existing code, and we model that also in our framework. Moreover, our framework explicitly captures like adaptivity, which is like not that much, like not captured like in the previous framework. In that sense, like we get a more general framework which like captures all of the existing framework. Yeah. Okay. Then on top of that, like there are these questions that people ask, like about necessary and sufficient condition. Now this has, this is more of one could say it's academically interesting, right? I mean, like when a code is a valid quantum error correcting code, and Neil and Laughlin basically gave the necessary and sufficient condition for it. And over time, like people looked at, like many different setting and so on and all that. But I mean, again, one could ask the question for this more general setup, what is the most general necessary and sufficient condition that you can give, like which can tell whether a code is a valid strategy code or not. And we give those conditions. And those conditions, in the special case, reduce to the regular Neal-Laughlin condition that we know in the literature. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there is you can define what does it mean to correct error in the framework. What it means that you start with some psi, and then it talks with your interrogator, and then the error map acts on, like I mean, here and there with it. So this is how interrogator and error map are talking to each other, and they are talking to your quantum state that you have encoded. And when you decode, you should be able to get the original quantum state that you encode. So this is what like a correction will mean in the strategic code framework. And if you start with this definition, you can get, like the condition for error correction, like that. I mean, basically we get two kinds of conditions. Like, we get not only the algebraic error correction condition, but we also get something called, like information theoretic error correction condition, which, like this bunch of conditions which are, like equivalent. Yeah. And on top of that, like we also develop this, like using your check measurements and your like the decoder and like a bunch of, like the encoder. So C0 is encoder, all of these C are, like these interrogator checks, and D is basically your decoder, and using that you can define a big object called Q. So Q is, like like it has a bunch of, like tensors. So this is what makes the life difficult actually, like in the optimization. And you can define, like some notion of like, I mean, some metric like which you want to optimize, and you can which can give you your objective function, and you could try to optimize your objective function over such Q, which has, like certain constraints, which overall, like I mean, you can forget the details. What it means overall is that it's an optimization over, some separable cone, and that you can actually solve using, like some seesaw based algorithm. So you will have a bunch of SDPs like SDP1, SDP2, or something, depending on how many tensors you have, like, SDPL, and you can solve one, then move to another, then move to another until, like, so we reach some convergence. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there are many open questions here. Like, for example, I mean, like we model quantum memory in our case also. Like, let's say you can have some small quantum memory which can be used to give like, I mean, nice strategic code, but we didn't give the necessary and sufficient condition for that. We did not give necessary sufficient condition for the approximate case. Yes. Like, so that is also, like, lacking in the work. Then on top of that, like, I mean, like one could try to develop concrete instances. So framework is one thing. For example, a stabilizer framework, like, when people develop, that's a framework. But there are different stabilizer codes within the framework. So what are the interesting codes that one can develop? And we are trying to build that. Then one can try to build some ideas from machine learning to, like build a better, like codes. So here, for example, this interrogator is nothing but a reinforcement learning agent. And with one of the interns at A Star, basically we are, like trying to build this, this interrogator. Actually, there is a student at IIT Kharagpur also is visiting us, is supporting us, like, for this project here. And yeah, I mean, there are many interesting questions coming from it, like in how to do, like laws. I mean, can we get, I mean, bypass, for example, things like Easton-Neal theorem, or I don't know. I mean, maybe there is some hope there. Yeah. So there are all these questions that we mentioned also in the paper. You can look at details. I think I'm already, like, finished 1 hour time. So I think I will just close here. I think if there are questions, maybe please ask. Yeah. That's it.
Okay. What is happening is that you have a series of errors, right? And this interrogator is trying to find those sequence of errors, right? And trying to do some correction.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
mean, in a
exactly.
typical code, we just have one error we detect and we correct. But you have a sequence of errors, right? And
Yeah,
your
yeah, so
this interrogator is trying to, after each error, is trying to find the error and try to correct it or something. Is
yeah.
it something like that?
Yeah, and actually, if you think about in regular like fault tolerance, let's say when you try to build a quantum computer, you will have sequence of errors, right? I mean,
Right. So in
when
that sense, in that say dynamic, or you say that temporal also, spatial and temporal. So you
yeah,
have multiple error, because usually we think of just one error happening, we are just correcting it and decoding it. But
yeah,
here you have a sequence of error, and you have this integrator after each error is trying to detect it and correct it, and that
yeah,
is
yeah,
something like that is happening, is it?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, Pankaj, I think you captured. How are you?
Oh, fine. So we will meet in November.
That's really nice. Like I mean,
Uh,
talking and chatting like when I was visiting and sharing the office with you.
Right. Okay. So we will, it will be nice to have some example, as you are trying to develop.
Yeah. So I mean, all of the existing codes and so on, like I mean, they are already you can model in this framework. But then the question is, can you give anything extra, like which none of the people have in the, and in fact, have something, like with like people at ISI and Virginia. Yeah. Yeah. So this paper is more of you could say an academic paper where we develop the formalism, develop the necessary and sufficient condition, give the optimization and all. But it's like, it's a bit far away from experimentalist. I mean, like they would want, give me a particular code. So this is a framework paper, like where you prove theorems and so, but the explicit code, I think that we are, like for that we are running lots of numerics like on computer and like trying to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody?
I just have a comment. So there was a recent paper, maybe this is along a different thread by John Preskill, which talks about error bursts and error correction.
Which paper?
I don't remember the title, but what the paper had was it is trying to have some kind of an error correction procedure for error bursts.
Okay. I think maybe I might have seen it, but I haven't read it. Yeah.
Mm.
Let me check if there are any questions on YouTube or not. Well, I see no questions on YouTube.
Okay. Okay, thanks a lot. Like thanks for the questions and yeah, like listening to the talk.
Okay, thank you very much, Kishor. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Kishore.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the questions.